Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I wanted to just touch on all the different tapestries here as we begin. And as Annie shared, the tapestries take about a year or so to make. And I'm actually not going to start in the order that they were made, but I just want to point them out. I believe that all the different religions of the world are actually windows through which we perceive God and the universe and humanity, and they all have similar truths, and they all have a different way of perceiving God. So over here we have our Hindu tapestry, and then our Buddhist, Christian, Muslim. And then when we come back to the front of the room, we have Judaism, Sikh, pagan, Native American, and Shinto. You'll notice that there are still two blank tapestries, and that one represents Baha'i, and the other is Tao. And then we will be complete. So probably in another 3 or 4 years, we'll have all of them done. And I know that every time one of the tapestries is created, that it's not just putting together a tapestry. I know that the teams come together and they really engage and develop deeply a connection with the religion that they're representing. So, and I know many people have worked on all the different tapestries here. So if you've worked on any of the other ones here, would you please stand so we can see who you are? Around the room, up in the balcony. Thank you. And so again, we are so blessed. The African tapestry, as you heard, took over 2 years to make. And the reason being is Africa is not just Africa. Africa is a whole continent. Africa is made up of many countries, of many languages, of many traditions, and of many tribes. And so for this team to come together and to be able to synthesize all of the stories and all of the different branches of African spirituality and create such a magnificent work of art is truly a blessing, and it is amazing. So again, thank you. What are you going to do with your free Sunday afternoons now? They've been up in that upper room every Sunday. So one of the symbols that's behind in the light brown, and it's also on your dress. Would you stand up so they can see your dress? This is a symbol called Nyame. And if you look at it closely, it sort of resembles the galaxy. It sort of resembles the Milky Way. It's a very ancient symbol. And so it's appropriate that it is behind and behind that, because Nyame means except God. In other words, no one lives who saw its beginning, and no one will live to see its end except God. Except God simply means that one recognizes the supremacy of God, and in essence, one is not afraid of anything except the Supreme Being. God is omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. God is above all. Sound familiar? Sounds like our unity teachings, doesn't it? And I love the idea of this, the supremacy of God is not afraid of anything. And again, that sort of gets back to our unity teachings, where we believe there's only one presence and one power in the universe. And that presence and power is God, the good, omnipresence, omniscience. And there is nowhere we can be where God is not, and there is no situation in our lives that is more powerful than that which is within us. Whether it be illness or poverty or any difficulty, the weather, the Spirit of God that is within and all around us is more powerful than any of that. Nyame. It is an empowering belief. So Africa is the cradle of civilization. It is where humanity began, and it is where we all come from. And I at first thought, maybe I should get an African-American speaker for today because, what does a white woman from Chicago know about Africa? But the truth is, I actually went to Africa when I was 20. I literally grew up in the city and almost never left. I know you've heard that story a million times. However, I really wanted to travel. And every time I made plans with friends, they canceled. We're going to England. Oh, sorry, I can't go. Oh, we're going here. Oops, sorry, I can't go. And I realized if I wanted to go somewhere, I was going to have to go alone. And a friend of mine called and said, I found an ad in the Reader in this newspaper in Chicago, and it said, planning a trip to Africa, call this number. So I did. And there was we were going to meet in France and then drive across the continent of Africa. It sounded good, so I signed up for it. And I didn't know what countries I was going to. I didn't know anything. I just knew I wanted to get out of Chicago for a while. So with 20 people in a Mercedes truck with hollowed out sides, canvas sides, and we camped out. We drove across North and East Africa. We were supposed to only be in the Sahara for a week, but we had 13 flat tires as we were crossing the desert. And we didn't have a lot of spares, so we literally would walk around the desert looking for pieces of rubber or anything we could to fill the tires so that we could keep going. And a trip that was supposed to be 3 months lasted around 5 or 6. And it was amazing, and it changed my life. And it broke me from my habits, and in those days there were no cell phones, and if you wrote a letter it took a month to get there and a month to get back, so you literally were away from your family. I got to meet and be with a tribe of Tuaregs in the Sahara Desert, drove across from Niger to Cameroon to Nigeria, to Rwanda, Tanzania, and when I got to in Zaire, which is not Zaire now, I know, but it was Zaire then, I got to meet a group of pygmies who were living in the jungle, but they were forced out by the government and had to live alongside the road. And so we were trading with them, and we would, we had shirts and pens or whatever, and I actually still have the belt that I received. And one of the things that I noticed was that there was no sense of ownership, that they truly lived as one, and they truly lived in this spirit of generosity. One person traded a shirt for something, and one of the people took the shirt, and someone else just took it away from him and put it on. And rather than say, hey, that's my shirt, I just traded for this, instead, everybody stood back and went, wow, you look so great in that shirt. And I was like, wow. And for me, when I returned, I understood the definition of a displaced person. Because when I would come home, people would say, well, how is Africa? And it's like, well, how do you answer a question like that? Because it's not just like, how was New York or how was your dinner? It was a different country and a different culture. And, I hitchhiked around Kenya for a while because the truck that I was on tipped over in a ditch, and in Africa it takes a long time to get things straight, so I knew I'd be there for 3 weeks at least. And I had some friends who were getting on the ferry to go over Lake Victoria, and all I had was my passport, the clothes I was wearing, $5, and my camera. And I thought, to heck with it. I'm just going to leave my stuff on the truck. I know eventually it's going to show up in Nairobi, so I can get it then. And I just got on, and I traveled that way for about 3 weeks. And it was then that I realized what Jesus meant when he said, when you travel, don't take your purse, don't take this, just enter a place. And for me, what it made me do was totally rely on God. And I had the food that I needed, I met the right people, I had the shelter that I needed, and I had one miracle and synchronistic event happen over and over and over again. And what my experience was of Africa, and it's what other people have told me, is that it is a magical place where synchronicities abound, and it is so beautiful. And I know that many of you have been there. Would you stand up if you've been to Africa? Wow, look around the room. Wow. I'd actually like you to shout out the country, or one or two of the countries you've been.
Ghana, Liberia, Cameroon, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Senegal. Yeah.
So y'all might want to connect over at breakfast and share your stories. I heard some great stories over at breakfast at the different experiences that people have had over on that amazing continent. And again, I have to say that changed my life. It changed how I viewed reality. It changed how I thought of everything. And it was amazing. So I want to continue this in that the storyteller is key to African spirituality. The storyteller holds a very high place in the community and carries the traditions. And a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, like 20-some years ago, I was in Jonesboro, Tennessee at a storytellers convention. And I want to begin by sharing this story, and it is about an African village. And the storyteller would come out, just as you see in the tapestry, and would tell stories every night, and people would sit and listen to the storyteller over and over again. And then one day, the town got electricity. And so a Westerner came in and brought a television. And when the storyteller came to tell the stories, nobody was there because they were all sitting in front of the television. And the next night, nobody was there because they were all sitting in front of the television. And night after night, this continued for about a week. And then at the end of the week, everybody returned to the storyteller. And the Westerner was like, well, this little television has way more stories, thousands more stories than your storyteller could ever tell. And the people said, yep, that's true. That's true. But the difference is the storyteller knows me. So there's that connection that is part of the story and the ritual. So I want to tell you the story of creation according to the Yoruba tradition. And it begins with Olorin, who she's this like supreme being goddess, and she is wanting to create the universe, and she has this big pot of water, and we see that water is a symbol that permeates also African spirituality. And so she had this big pot, and she wanted to pour it out into the universe and create the world, but what happened was the water that she had in this big pot was so filled with glory. Can you imagine having something that's just too full of glory? It was so full of glory, and it was so hot that when she poured out this pot, it just burned everything up in its sight. It just just burnt it up. And she would try again and again and again, and the same thing would happen. And then she remembered that she had made a small pot a very, very long time ago, and she had given it to her eldest child, Olodumare. And she said, Olodumare, what I want you to do is come and bring your pot, and I will pour the water of my glory into yours and catch it in your pot. And the water that is in your pot will combine with mine, and it'll cool so it's just about right for creation. And so the combined waters of Olorin and Olodumare flooded the heavens because the temperature was just right. And stars began to wink into existence, and creation began. So this was out of time, and eventually Olodumare had given birth to her own children, and so Olorin said, I have another task for you. Do you see that spot over there? I want you to create a place called Earth with people on it, and each person with a special destiny for creating goodness and truth and beauty in their lives. It's a little different from our creation story, don't you think? The snake, being thrown out of the Garden of Eden, worm of the dust. No. Each person with a special destiny to creating goodness and truth and beauty in their lives. That's what we're created for. Give it the proper rhythms and seasons that it needs to grow and develop. And then I want you to share this great work with your children. So they created Earth, and she called her children together, and her children were also diverse and had many different qualities. And so as all the children also poured their water upon the earth, they allowed their own unique ways to affect humanity. And so one poured out harmony and stability. Ocean poured out beauty and sensuality. Oya, storms and hurricanes. We have been visited by Oya. Shangu poured out flamboyance. Another, maternal love. Another poured out waters that created tests and disruption. And another, creative waters into all of nature and life, so that each may be the creation, diverse and ongoing, and it was done. Nice creation story, is it not? And what I noticed in the African spirituality is that the water continues. The symbol and the ritual of water, it begins in the creation story that this magnificent glory comes from the Creator, that it comes and it blesses and creates the earth, and it mixes up so that we each have our own unique abilities, we each have our own unique purpose in being here, and our own unique destiny to create goodness and truth and beauty in our lives. One of the rituals that permeates African spirituality is the libation ritual. And the libation ritual is when you pour water or liquid into another liquid. And it is done with intention, and it is being received from the other side. So you can use water, which symbolizes friendly relations and camaraderie between man and spirit. You can use wine, which symbolizes friendly relations. Liquor, actually water is cooling and healing, and reconciliation. And then there's also hard liquor, which is fire. And it's used to rouse, cement, ignite, protect, and perform strong purification. So you don't use the hard stuff unless you're real serious. In the ritual of pouring the libation, it is done in celebration, it is done in dedication, it is done to awaken the ancestors who are also a part of African spirituality. And it is very important that if we use the libation, particularly the fire spirits, to know that we are awakening the ancestors. And the writer says that after awakening the ancestors, you then have to do something. So if you waken your ancestors, don't just waken them up and then go on with your life, but wake up the ancestors and then discuss something or ask for protection or from guidance or support or stability. And so today, we can't have a libation ceremony because it would take a lot of time and we need a lot of water, but the team has created another form of libation. So Nyame and Linnea and Mercedes, if you want to come forward and speak to our libation ritual.
So this morning we have a very special love gift actually from Jackie. She these are tea bags from Kenya. And what we would like to do, since libation is it's a very sacred service, and it means to give. It's an offering. And so we're giving each family, each person actually, a tea bag from Kenya. What we would like you to do is to go home in a quiet space and sit down and boil you some hot water and say a prayer and enjoy your own spiritual libation. It is a love gift offering. And there is a proverb inside that you can pin up and recite and know. And this our love gift from us to you. Namaste.
And you might drink the tea and wake up your ancestors, and ask them for some guidance. So I just want to make one more thread with the water and the drinking gourd, and that is that when the Africans were brought here as slaves, the gourd and the water continued to be part of the thread that carried them to their homeland, to the motherland, to Mother Africa. And many of the African spirituals that were sung were a connection back to Africa. And some songs in particular would speak about what was going on, like Wade in the Water, which we sang last week, is an African spiritual. And some of the spirituals were actually directions as to how to escape the South. And the song Following the Drinking Gourd is about following the North Star. The drinking gourd was the Big Dipper, yeah, and the North Star. And so within the song were directions for the slaves to follow to leave. So to follow the North Star was the message embedded to guide the slaves along the way. And I want to share with you the first verse of that. When the sun comes back and the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. Now, the trip from the South to Ohio took most refugees a full year. So they were encouraged to leave in the winter to make it to Ohio before the following winter. As the Ohio River is too fast and too wide to swim across, it was best in winter when it was frozen. So the first verse instructs slaves to leave in the winter. Now the second verse told slaves to follow the bank of the Tombigbee River north. They were to look for dead trees marked with the drawings of a left foot and a round mark denoting a peg, which was the man who was singing the song had a peg leg, and so they had the foot and the peg as a symbol to follow. And the second verse is, the river ends between two hills. Follow the drinking gourd. There's another river on the other side. Follow the drinking gourd. When the great big river meets the little river, follow the drinking gourd, for the old man is awaiting for to carry to freedom. So someone would be there when you reached the end to help you make the rest of your journey. So we see what began with the creation of water and the spirituality and the diversity of all of us to create beauty and truth. That whole thread is carried through ritual, and it is carried through to the United States. So again, I want to thank the Tapestry Committee for all of your dedication and for not giving up for those 2.5 years. Because we know that, again, you have condensed and made a work of art out of African spirituality, which contains many countries, many traditions, many languages, many tribes, and many rituals. But the truth is, Africa is all of our mother. We came from Africa. She is our mother, despite where we came from later in life. And it is a magical place. Nyame, except God, there is nothing else. Amen. Now you can bless the offering. Oops.
That was a beautiful talk. Right now,